This is Research Like a Pro, episode 315, 5 Tips for When the Courthouse Burned. Welcome to Research Like a Pro, a genealogy podcast about taking your research to the next level, hosted by Nicole Dyer and Diana Elder, accredited genealogist professional. Diana and Nicole are the mother-daughter team at FamilyLocket.com and the authors of Research Like a Pro, a genealogist guide. With Robin Worthland, they also co-authored the companion volume, Research Like a Pro with DNA. Join Diana and Nicole as they discuss how to stay organized, make progress in their research, and solve difficult cases. Let's go! Today's episode is sponsored by newspapers.com. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Research Like a Pro genealogy podcast.
Well, hello, Nicole. How are you doing today?
Great, but we just started summer, so it's a little busier.
When you have children at home, it indeed is a different kind of busy.
Yeah, we've been to the pool a lot already. Well, what's up with you?
Well, I've been working on the wrap-up from my Cline project. I finished my report, finished all the research, and I decided I wanted to organize all my documents that I had discovered because I had browsed a lot of tax records and found these tax lists. I'd ordered some land records from the National Archives, and I wanted to get those really well done, those documents, so that if I uploaded those to FamilySearch or my ancestry tree, they'd have the citation on them and have the title. So I've been working on that, and it's been really fun. I just do it in Canva and take my citation straight from my research log and copy and paste it right onto the document and upload the original document. And then I highlight with a transparent yellow box the actual place in the tax list or the census or whatever that the ancestor is named, so that, when you look at a list and there's 30 people on it, you don't have to try to go through it again and see where is your guy. So anyway, I've been having fun. It's one of those tasks where you don't need a lot of brain power, and it's good to do at the end of the day when you're kind of tired, but it's very fulfilling to get that done. So I've decided I want to do this at the end of every project just to get my documents in good shape.
Well, that's great. Good job. One thing I just discovered, which is kind of funny, you probably already knew this, that in Airtable, you can copy and paste into the attachment column. So if you make a snipping of an article or record with your Windows snipping tool, then just put it in the attachment column and then click paste. It will put the document right there for you, and then it's just there.
Oh, that's easier, because what I have been doing, I've been doing attachments for a long time. I would do the snip and then just save it to my downloads and then upload it. So pasting would be easier.
Yeah, it's pretty great. I don't know if that's because I just upgraded recently to the paid plan, or if it's just a new thing, or we just didn't know how to do it, but it's been great. And I was going to say that I don't usually add the citation to the image. I just put it in the metadata or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I name it, and then, how we do it. But I think that is really nice to have that done for sharing and for attaching those citations to the record so that it doesn't get confused or lost. One thing I noticed is with a lot of the records that I took pictures of with my phone is that in Google Photos, I can type unlimited amount of paragraphs into the description for that picture. And so I've been putting kind of some basic citation information in there, which is great because I remember now what it is, but in 5 years, I probably wouldn't. So
that's a really, really good point. And I know people do that, will put their citations sometimes in the metadata, which is a great idea also. Just so long as we are somehow identifying these different images that we either take, like you did, or we're downloading from various websites.
Yeah, so that it doesn't just say IMG 49380_6521.
Exactly.
Well, for our announcements, we have the next webinar in the Research Like a Pro webinar series coming up on August 20th. It's going to be presented by Steve Little. The title is Who's Eli's Daddy? A Civil War Era Open Secret. And this is a DNA case study. And this is going to be about a man named James Eli Bauer, who was born in 1863 in Ashe County, North Carolina during the Civil War. And there's some oral history going on here and talking about how he was the son of a Confederate soldier who allegedly didn't return home to his wife and children, but another woman, Margaret Bauer. And 9 months later, Bawley Bauer was born. and that's his nickname, Bali. Gotta love these names. Then shortly after that, the soldier passed away. And so this case study shows DNA analysis both of autosomal and Y DNA to see if it can confirm or refute this family legend about who the father was. And the name of the proposed father is William McMillan. So this is going to be a great lecture. The topics include North Carolina, Civil War, non-paternity event, oral family history, Y DNA, autosomal DNA, pedigree collapse, endogamy, multiple relationships, and visualization techniques in genetic genealogy. So if you have not signed up for our Research Like a Pro webinar series and this sounds interesting to you, make sure you sign up. And you can register anytime and you can see all of the previous recordings for the webinar series from this year. And then you can attend Zoom for any upcoming monthly webinars. Those reports that go with each of these case studies and the recordings will be available. You have lifetime access to those. Well, our next Research Like a Pro study group is this fall, beginning August 28th. Early bird registration for that ends July 31st. So if you're thinking about registering, make sure you do so before July 31st to get the discount. And if you're trying to learn Airtable and you need some help, consider looking into our Airtable quick reference guides. We have one focusing on DNA matches and the other one just on Airtable basics. Those are PDF guides you can purchase on our website for $10. Well, if you are interested at all in learning about artificial intelligence, we are having a workshop, Research Like a Pro with AI, July 29th through August 1st, and we hope to see you there. You can join our newsletter to get all this news and coupons. Just go to familylocket.com and click on sign up.
Well, thanks for taking us through all of our announcements. So many fun things happening this summer and this fall. Well, I'm excited today to talk about burned courthouse research and using my example of the Cline research, which took place in northeastern Arkansas with 2 burned counties. So I think sometimes we see this and we don't even know what to do. I know years ago when I was working on this project trying to figure out the family for Clemsy Cline, I just did not know what to do, and I left it alone because it didn't seem like there was any way to tackle this. So I'm really happy now that I have actually reconstructed the family. I have a very strong hypothesis. So I thought we would share some of tips for dealing with record loss. So the very first tip is to discover the extent of the record loss. We often just want to jump into researching our ancestors, but this is part of the locality research in understanding what is actually available. So this is the first step, whether your courthouse burned or maybe it was flooded or there was a tornado. We hear all these stories about how something happened and took out the records, but it could be that some of those records survived. So a really good place to get started to learn about your county is the FamilySearch Wiki. And every wiki page for a county will show a nice table with the beginning date for government county records. So let's look at a couple of examples. This Cline project takes place in Izard County and Fulton County, and they both suffered this record loss after the Civil War. So the Civil War kind of continued for a while in the Ozarks of northeastern Arkansas, and there was a lot of fighting back and forth between ex-Confederates and ex-Union soldiers. So we see, sadly, the loss of a lot of courthouses. I don't know why it was so fun to burn the courthouse, when you're attacking a community. But the wiki page does have a little caveat that they always include, and it says information for this chart was taken from various sources, often containing conflicting dates. This information should be taken as a guide and should be verified by contacting the county and or the state government agency. So I think that's really wise to use it as a guide, but then actually contact the county courthouse and see if they perhaps have a few records that maybe FamilySearch didn't digitize and are not in this table. So with Izard County, Arkansas, there are no records before 1889. So marriage, court, land, probate, they all begin in 1889, which is certainly not going to help me when my case is there in 1840 and 1850s. So, it's always discouraging when you see that. And I contrast that with Cape Girardeau, Missouri, which also had a courthouse fire. And this one was in 1870. But when you look at the table on FamilySearch Wiki, you'll see that they've got marriage, starting at 1805, court at 1815, land records at 1821, probate at 1805. So at first glance, you might think, oh no, there's nothing there because the courthouse burned. But in reality, there's plenty of records early on. So, two different scenarios with the same thing that happened with the courthouse burning.
Yeah, it's interesting how each county just has a different type of record loss, and some have more loss and others have less, and some have like reconstructed records. So it's good to really figure that out. Well, the next tip is to seek alternate jurisdictions. Usually, this is the biggest tip to find records when a county has suffered a loss. And so we can look at a state level or a federal level, or even private bodies like churches or newspapers or businesses where records weren't held at the county courthouse that suffered a fire or some kind of disaster. So, what is a jurisdiction? This is a political, administrative, religious, or private body that has authority over a region or people and keeps records for a specific purpose. So, if you find that there has been record loss at one jurisdiction, records from another can fill the gap. So, if you look in our blog post about this topic, you'll see a table that has record types at various jurisdictions. So, for private jurisdictions, you will find like church records, cemetery records, newspaper, business, societies, directories, school records, and so forth. And some of these overlap with, for example, the town or city jurisdiction. And then some don't overlap, some are unique. So for the town and the private, the things that overlap there would be maybe like school records, where, the school might have its own records, whereas the town might also have school records that are kept and maintained at the town level. And then at the county or district level, you'll see vital and court and probate and tax records, whereas it also overlaps with the state and province level, where you'll see also tax records kept at the state level. And that's because the tax records were usually sent from the county, a copy was made and sent to the state. So make sure you look at the table to see the wide variety of records available at each type of jurisdiction, and then the overlap where you can find replacement records for ones that were lost. Well, Clemsy, Cline, Weatherford has been a Brickwall ancestor for years because of the Izard County, Arkansas record loss. And we only knew that she lived in that location from the indirect evidence of her husband's tax listings in 1839 and 1845. But by 1850, the Weatherford family had moved north to Morgan County, Missouri, and then on to Texas by 1860. So with no marriage record for Clemsy and Heatherson Weatherford, we know her maiden name just from the death certificates of her children. So luckily we have those. But the family doesn't appear in the 1840 census, which would be really helpful if we could find them there to place them in a community, but they haven't been found on that census yet, or just weren't counted. Maybe they were just in transit. Well, a derivative record in the form of a book compiled by Desmond Walls Allen provided the tax listings for Henderson Weatherford. And the tax lists had been sent to the state, just like I said earlier, and so they survived the county record loss. And revisiting that book, you found entries for John Cline and John C. Cline, also in Izard County in 1839 and 1845. So could these be relatives of Clemsy? Were these Johns the same man or two different men? There were some more questions.
Right. The great thing about those tax records was that there was not a huge list of Clines. There were only these two. And, if there had been like 20 different people, then I would have had to wade through all of them. But I was able to focus on John and John C. Cline. So our next step with this whole idea of a burned county is to really take a look at the FamilySearch Catalog and see what is available, because FamilySearch is free and has digitized so many records throughout the United States and throughout the world, and is continuing to do that. We can take a look at these jurisdictions on the catalog, and you may not have really noticed how you can do this. So I wanted to walk everyone listening through this. So I often will start at the county level, so Izard County. But as we've mentioned, when the records are not available, you have to go to a different jurisdiction. And so federal level, we always have the federal censuses. Those are available in this era, at least for Arkansas. There are federal land records, and there were the images of the original tax records sent to the state. So those tax records I knew had to be somewhere. All I had was this book, and I wanted to look at the originals because, of course, we want to see if the derivative record, the person compiling that read it correctly. And I was not sure where these tax records were. I thought maybe they didn't survive, or maybe they were at the Arkansas State Archives. Were they on a state website? And so first I decided just to try FamilySearch Catalog and see if they were there. And I went to the Izard County page, and I always go there and look at taxation. But when I looked up taxation, it was just the same book, the one by Desmond Allen Walls. So then I decided I would look at the state level. So I went to the Arkansas page, and saw an entry for Arkansas tax records 1821 to 1884. And there they were. They were all digitized. I could view those from home. They had every county. I had to go through and find the ones for Izard County. So that was an exciting find. And I just had assumed they would be on the county page, and they were on the state page. So something else to note is each catalog page will have links to these other jurisdictional levels. So from within the county page, I could click on the state Arkansas page, or there's the option for places within. And places within are smaller communities. Often what I see when clicking into those are things like church records, school records, or cemetery records for that specific community within the county. So always click around on the FamilySearch Catalog page and check out those different jurisdictions. And don't make the mistake like I was doing at first by just looking at the county and thinking there's nothing for the tax records here in this county. I probably thought that for a few years till I actually returned to this project.
Right. Locality guides are so amazing. And we do have to consider all the different jurisdictions to include in our locality guide. And that's so important. So good job. And thanks for the tips. I think those are really helpful tips, especially looking at the different jurisdictions that are connected to the catalog pages.
Right. They make it easy for us. We just have to think to click on it and then look through it.
Yeah, we just have to get so good at clicking on everything.
That's not hard.
Well, this episode is brought to you by newspapers.com. Discover your mom in the newspaper when you search newspapers.com. Find the stories that made her who she is today by searching the largest online newspaper archive. Newspapers.com makes it easy to find your mom, grandma, and others in the papers. Search more than 945 million pages from major news titles to small town papers. Uncover birth and marriage announcements, obituaries, photos, and much, much more. Explore papers dating back to 1690 or as recent as last month. Newspapers.com is used by millions of people every month for genealogy, historical research, and more. Find something you like with newspapers.com. It's a snap to save and share articles with family and friends or attach them directly to your ancestry tree. Use promo code FamilyLocket for a 20% discount on your subscription. That's code FamilyLocket and celebrate the stories of a lifetime with newspapers.com. Well, the next tip is to discover all the available records for every clue. So when you're working with record loss, it's really important to extract every clue from every available record. So of course, you want to put that into a research log. And as you're adding more clues, you can return to the research log or timeline or both to see how everything is fitting together. And it can also be helpful at this time to create tables and maps to really see the data more easily. So as you're researching, you should be constantly correlating all of the clues. Well, in the federal census, we can get a lot of clues about residents, migration, household members, and more. So when the courthouse burns, we can kind of rely on these records, especially if we've located our family in them, to give a good foundation for other records. And Clemsy first appears in the 1850 census. And at that time, she resided in Morgan County, Missouri, with her husband, Henderson Weatherford, and their presumed children. 2 Cline children, who were likely her kin, were also present in the household. And of note was the birth location of all of the children who were born in Arkansas, giving us evidence of their previous residence. Looking at Clemsy D. Weatherford, the youngest Weatherford child, we can see that they were in Arkansas up until 2 years before the 1850 census, which was 1848. So they had recently moved to Missouri. Well, the same 1850 census page shows the household of Jacob Cline, and like the Weatherford household, a Mahala and a Robert Cline were named last, indicating maybe they were boarders. And Mahala shares an Alabama birthplace with Clemsy, so that gives a clue that maybe they were both from the same place in Alabama. And Robert Cline shares an Arkansas birthplace with the children in the Weatherford household. So all the children in the Weatherford household were born in Arkansas, the Weatherfords and the unknown Cline children, who were Talitha Cline and John Cline, ages 10 and 8. So they're all showing kind of this similar migration route. We have some people from Alabama and some from Arkansas. Well, the Jacob Cline household included some people born in Virginia. That was Jacob, the head of household, age 39. And then Talitha Cline, age 43, born in Kentucky. And then Reuben and John M. Cline, ages 13 and 12, born in Kentucky. And then they went to Missouri, where Elizabeth Cline was born, age 11, down to Basil Cline, who was born in Missouri. So it looks like they might have come to Missouri sooner than the Weatherford family, but they did have the Robert Cline in their household, who was 5 years old, along with Mahala Cline, who was 22. And so they kind of seem like a mother and a son, maybe, who were living with this Jacob Cline family. And the Robert Cline was born in Arkansas. So we definitely see some connections in the names and in the places of birth of the family, kind of showing this migration path. Well, looking at every single clue in this 1850 census, we can hypothesize that Mahala and Jacob could be Clemsy's siblings, and that the 3 Cline children boarding were related somehow. The Arkansas births pointed to residence for the Weatherford family and the 3 Cline children in Arkansas during the 1840s. And also, Talitha, John, and Robert seemed to be of appropriate ages to be siblings. So Robert was 5, and then in the Weatherford household, there was Talitha and John, who were 10 and 8. So 10, 8, and 5 could definitely be siblings. And if, they couldn't all be in the same home and they were kind of splitting up, that makes sense.
Right. When I first looked at this, I thought the same thing that you said, that maybe Mahala was the mother of Robert. But if these 3 children were siblings, Talitha's 10, and so Mahala would have had a child at age 12, which doesn't necessarily make sense, does it? So you can see why this was such a conundrum. Who are these children? We know they're related somehow, these Clines. So, next I went to the federal land records because that's what I had for the census. And federal land records can be searched on the Bureau of Land Management website by state and county. So right away, I could go to Arkansas, Izard County, and put in Cline, just that surname, to see who will pop up. And I found 3 individuals who patented land between 1841 and 1850, John C. Cline, John Cline, we've seen them before in the tax list, and Mahala Cline. And so, of course, when I saw Mahala Cline, I wondered, is this the same Mahala that shows up in the 1850 census? So this was the exact period that the Weatherfords were residing in Izard County because of the tax listings for Henderson. And so I mapped out the land patents, and they were all in the northern portion of Izard County. And I wanted to make sure I had every available record. So the land patents are available for free. They've been digitized. They're the final land patent. But I knew that to obtain that, the individual had to apply, and that those applications are at the National Archives in Washington, D.C. So I ordered those from a researcher, on-site researcher, and went through those. And what I really like about those original applications, you get the original date when they first applied, and it's often a few years before the final patent. So then you know when they really are appearing in this county. It often takes a few years to finalize the patent. And so I found that John Cline, and at this point he was called John Cline, that he applied for a patent in 1838, and it was approved, or the final one issued, in 1844. So that's a big difference of 6 years for, knowing whether someone was in the area. And this really helped to correlate with Clemsy being there in 1839 from the tax record, and knowing that John was there by 1838 to apply for a patent. So it's putting these people in the same place, the same time, which was helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other record that I wanted to explore was the land tract book entries for each of these Clines. So these, again, are available. These are on FamilySearch, and they're not completely indexed. they have been indexed, but I have found that it's easier for me just to browse them by state and then the county and then the volume and the township and range. The indexing didn't seem to pull up all the people very easily for me. So I wanted to just do it the old-fashioned way, which sometimes we have to do. So these are a little bit tricky to figure out. There's a FamilySearch Wiki page called United States Bureau of Land Management Tract Books Inventory, and that's where you go to find the actual volume number. And so they have it organized for you, and it helps you to see how to search in these tract books. But what they are, they're just images of these big books where they have recorded the name of the person, the land description, the dates. It's basically the same information as the applications I found. And I just wanted to make sure there wasn't anything extra there I was missing, because we have to get every detail we can when we have limited records. So it was quite a feat doing that for all of these records. I had 6 different land patents, and so 6 different land applications and 6 different tract book entries. But thankfully, I had my good research log where I could put all the details. So one of the things that I found very interesting as I was doing all this research was how the county split. So Izard County was a parent county, and about 1842, they took part of Izard and made Fulton County. And so even though the original land patents were begun in Izard, the people ended up being residents of Fulton County. So that's always confusing and always kind of a challenge. And of course, as soon as I discovered that, I was excited to look at Fulton County, but found it also suffered record loss. And so it wasn't going to help me either. So finally, I wanted to track down those tax lists. I felt like I was getting a little bit more information from the land records, but I wanted more. So I went to those original tax lists and I went through the Clines year by year, and I came upon a great find. In 1849, I found that John Cline had died and an Absalom Wiseman administered his estate and paid the tax. So at first I saw that and I thought, oh, this is probably an older John Cline. I had a feeling that the one who was there in 1838 was older, and that the John Cline who patented land about 10 years later could have been a son. And I just assumed it was the older man who had died, until I found that John C. Cline Elder actually was on the 1850 census, very much alive as a 65-year-old man. So it would seem that we actually have 2 John Clines for sure. And it was the younger one that died per the tax list where I saw the administrator for his estate. So ordinarily you would have a probate record or a court record, but those are gone. And so these tax records were the only place that I found that he had died.
Well, there you go. Good job finding that out.
Well, it was tricky because it wasn't under the C's, it was under the W's for Wiseman. And so, it was just going through the whole thing. And the reason I found it was because I thought maybe they're at the end of the tax list for some reason, when I didn't find John under the C's. And then there he was at the end. So, wow, it's a kind of a testament to sometimes reading the whole tax list for the county.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, our next tip is to correlate the evidence. So once you've gathered all kinds of evidence from different jurisdictions and you've squeezed every clue you can out of every record, it's good to compare and contrast and look at the data very carefully, and that's correlating. The tax entries had even more data than the land entries, so it was really helpful to use a table to make sense of all the data. And you can see how the land is correlated with the tax list. And this really helps to show which John patented which land. So in 1839, John C. Clean, which is funny that they spelled it like that instead of Cline, Clean, and John Clean, each paid a poll tax indicating that they were separate men, and one already had land and the other had only a horse and 4 cattle. So correlating the evidence from these 3 record sets available, federal census, federal land, and state tax lists, we can put together a profile for each Cline in Izard and Fulton counties. So let's go through both of them. We have John C. Cline Sr. and John Cline Jr. So first, John C. Cline Sr. He first appeared in Izard County, Arkansas in 1838, applying for a land patent for 40 acres that was finalized in 1844. He went on to patent an additional 40-acre parcel in 1839 and 1844, bringing his total land to 80 acres. When Fulton County was created from Izard, he became a resident of that county. He paid taxes on the Izard County land in 1839 and 1841, but had sold the land by 1850 when the tax list showed George French paying tax on the land originally granted to John C. Cline. John was taxed instead on 1 and then 2 town lots, having sold his 120 acres. John resided in Fulton County, Arkansas with his presumed wife and 4 children. Now let's see the profile of John Cline Jr. John Cline Jr. paid a poll tax in Izard County, Arkansas in 1839, headed a household in Morgan County, Missouri in 1840, and then applied for 3 land patents in Izard County, Arkansas in 1847 and 1848. Those patents state his residence as Fulton County in 1847 and Pulaski County in 1849. John Cline Jr. left no records in Pulaski County, Arkansas. Don't you love it when that happens?
I was excited about Pulaski too until there was nothing there.
That happened to me too recently, where I found another place that was mentioned as a residence. Then you look there and there's just nothing. Well, maybe there's something, but we haven't found it yet. Well, continuing on this profile of John Cline Jr., the tax lists of Fulton County reveal his death by 1849 when Absalom Wiseman, administrator for the estate of John Cline, paid the taxes on his patented land. So that right there is such a good example of how correlating the land location and the tax list gave you really good information about who was who and which man was the one who passed away.
Exactly. And it makes sense that John Jr. left no records on Pulaski because he died. He must have just been there very briefly.
Yeah. With these land speculators, and I don't know if that's true that they were land speculators, but it seems like in this era, it was really common for people to be continually moving and trying to get new land or better land or trying to make money from buying and then selling the land. So it's interesting to see how quickly they moved.
That's very true. Land speculation was huge in this era.
That was such a great discovery about, Absalom Wiseman becoming the administrator. What good tax records those were. Well, after that, in 1852, Sally Cline paid the tax on one of the land parcels, and Sarah Blair paid the tax on the other 2. By 1843, Irvin Blair paid the tax for the 2 parcels, and no mention was made of Sally Cline for the other parcel. Sarah Cline, residing in the household of F. Heron in 1850 in Fulton County, could be the widow of John Cline Jr. With twins born in 1848, she may have been his second wife, and upon his death, sent his 3 other children north to Missouri with Mahala Cline and Clemsy Cline Weatherford. The twins lived with Ferguson Heron in 1860, but Sarah possibly died as she was not present. 2 other younger girls are listed in the household and could be her daughters, or they could be other relatives of Ferguson Heron.
So when I was doing the correlation of this, it was exciting to see that Sally, that was the widow of John Cline, and maybe finding a hypothesis for these 3 children. So let's talk about Mahala, and then we'll kind of wrap this all up. So
Great.
Mahala Cline applied for her land patents as a young woman in 1844, and the 1850 tax list revealed George French paying taxes on land originally patented by her. So without a deed, because the deeds don't survive, this lets us know that she would have sold the land to George and she was gone, which correlates with this Mahala Cline who shows up in 1850 in Morgan County, Missouri, in the household of Jacob Cline with Robert, age 5. Then Mahala married Thomas Shockley in 1854. So, there have been some people online who have thought that Mahala was the wife of John Cline, but it doesn't make sense because she was young and she got married and the marriage record says Mahala Cline. It doesn't make sense that she would have been a widow of John Cline because now we know that John Jr.'s wife was Sally or Sarah, and she stayed behind in Arkansas. So my hypothesis right now is that Mahala and those 3 Cline children, after their dad died, just went north with the Weatherfords. They all went up to Morgan County. And for whatever reason, maybe they just didn't like Izard County at the time, and their hypothesized brother Jacob said, "Come up here and live. This is better up here." Who knows why people move around. But it was exciting to finally think of a scenario that fit with Mihaela and those 3 Cline children. So, of course, there's more work to be done. And in a future episode, I will reveal what I have found out with the DNA in working on this project.
That's great. It seems like you made a lot of progress with all the correlation that you did. And it's been fun to hear how you were able to put together the identities through the tax lists. And I know those tax lists were difficult to wade through, but they were just so worth it.
Oh, my goodness. Absolutely. Yeah, I would have had no idea about John Cline if I hadn't found that estate record and the idea of his wife. So the land descriptions and correlating that with the land records, yeah, that was very, very helpful. And then you can't forget about the census records because those give us family groupings.
Right. Those are super important. All right. Well, you can really tell a lot from these record substitutes. So hopefully you got some ideas for how to approach your difficult challenges with burned counties or record loss in any jurisdiction that you're trying to use records for. And so good luck with your record loss and your continuing research in any kind of situation that might result in having to use substitute records.
Right. Well, thanks everyone for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
Bye. Thank you for listening. We hope that something you heard today will help you make progress in your research. If you want to learn more, purchase our books, Research Like a Pro and Research Like a Pro with DNA on Amazon.com and other booksellers. You can also register for our online courses or study groups of the same names. Learn more at FamilyLocket.com/services. To share your progress and ask questions, join our private Facebook group by sending us your book receipt or joining our courses. To get updates in your email inbox each Monday, subscribe to our newsletter at FamilyLocket.com/newsletter. Please subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. We read each review and are so thankful for them. We hope you'll start now to research like a pro.